For most amateur filmmakers, the distance between a high-concept script and a finished film is measured in dollars. Practical effects, specialized makeup, and stunt coordination create a financial barrier that few independent projects ever cross. Rohit and Samya were childhood friends who wanted to bridge that gap. Rohit, a director, approached the project with a rigid skepticism toward anything supernatural, while Samya, his cameraman, handled the technical execution with a growing sense of unease. This chart compares the actual costs of a standard indie horror production against the duo's available resources. To hire professional stunt coordinators or makeup artists, you're looking at thousands of dollars. Rohit and Samya, however, were operating at the very bottom of the chart, with a budget of exactly zero. These financial constraints forced them to look for a workaround. They needed a way to achieve high production value without the capital required to pay for it, leaving them desperate for any alternative. When ambition outpaces a budget, filmmakers often develop a selective blindness. They become willing to overlook obvious logical inconsistencies as long as those inconsistencies allow the production to move forward. They found their solution in Mahesh, a childhood friend of Rohit's from the village of Nishchintpur. Mahesh was known as a jugaadu, someone who can bypass standard systems to find a shortcut for any problem. Mahesh claimed he could provide an entire village of actors who would perform their own stunts and provide locations for free. It was an offer of unlimited labor with no overhead costs. Rohit focused entirely on the savings, ignoring the basic social reality that entire communities do not volunteer for high-risk physical labor without compensation or an obvious incentive. By accepting the offer, they ignored the red flag inherent in a zero-cost labor agreement. In exchange for free production value, the two filmmakers were unknowingly walking straight into a meticulously prepared trap. The crew arrived in Nishchintpur and immediately began filming. The villagers didn't require direction or rehearsals. They simply began performing complex scenes with unsettling speed. During one of the first setups, a local actor dropped from the top of a massive tree. Rather than a dangerous fall, the figure landed with incredible grace, completely absorbing the impact, transitioning directly into a close-up without a wasted movement. The anomalies continued during a fire sequence. Despite the lack of fire-retardant suits or safety protocols, the villagers walked through active, roaring flames without their skin blistering or their clothes catching fire. This diagram shows the specific heat thresholds of human tissue. Exposure to 160 degrees Fahrenheit causes immediate third-degree burns, destroying the epidermis and the underlying nerve endings. The actors in Nishchintpur were standing in temperatures well above that limit, without any biological reaction. The footage showed villagers enduring thermal and kinetic forces that would kill a human being. The production value was no longer the result of talent, but of a total disregard for the laws of biology. Samya watched these events through his viewfinder, where the camera's objective focus made the physical impossibilities impossible to ignore. His anxiety grew as he realized the lens was capturing events that defied explanation. Rohit used cognitive dissonance to maintain his skepticism. He convinced himself that the firewalking and the leaps were just the result of village secrets or extreme physical training, rationalizing the supernatural events into a comfortable, logical box. The efficiency of the actors allowed a 7-day shoot to conclude in just 3. As soon as the final scene was wrapped, the entire village population disappeared from the set simultaneously. A skeptic's commitment to logic can function as a cognitive shield. It allows them to explain away the impossible through increasingly complex rationalizations, rather than acknowledging a reality that contradicts their worldview. The filmmakers returned to the city and began the standard post-production workflow in a sterile editing suite, away from the influence of the village's atmosphere. When Samya reviewed the raw footage, he found the fire, the trees, and the village huts perfectly rendered. However, every single frame where a villager should have been was completely empty. This split-screen model illustrates the objective lens effect. A human eye can be tricked by collective hypnosis, but a camera sensor only records photons bouncing off physical matter. The data showed zero light reflection where actors stood, confirming they never occupied the physical world. The blank footage provided the one thing Rohit couldn't argue with, a recorded lack of physical matter. Facing a screen of empty frames, his stubborn insistence on a purely logical explanation finally ran out of road. Rohit called Mahesh to demand an explanation. Mahesh responded with a bone-chilling confession. The entire village had been dead for years, and he had simply been waiting for an opportunity to prove it to them. The ghosts of Nishchintpur provided their services for free, specifically to humiliate a filmmaker who was so arrogant in his skepticism that he couldn't see the entities standing right in front of him. The ghosts of Nishchintpur exploited Rohit's arrogance and his rigid reliance on logical frameworks. They demonstrated that while a skeptic might ignore what they see with their eyes, they eventually have to reckon with what the camera fails to see.